Everyone has the same 5 core areas of their life that ultimately determine how happy they'll be. Unfortunately, most of us have developed failure habits in each, and it's Will Moore's mission to help replace those with success habits to maximize momentum. After exiting his business for a combined 9-figure sum, Will learned it's not just about becoming an entrepreneur of your career, but an entrepreneur of the most important business you'll ever run, your life. And to crush it in your life requires firing on all cylinders in your 5 cores by continually taking action, building habits, and maintaining balance in each. Hello, and welcome to the 5 Core Life Podcast with Will Moore, founder of More Momentum. If you're not already, please make sure to follow and subscribe to the 5 Core Life Podcast wherever you get your podcasts so you get notified when new episodes air every week. In today's episode of the 5 Core Life, host Will Moore sits down with Eric Partaker, high-performance coach and author, to discuss how to unleash your full potential and go from a 98%er to a 2%er. Eric is all about focusing on the main areas of life and gamifying to trick the brain into wanting to take actions that will help you lead your superhero life. Join Will and Eric to find out how. Are you ready to fire on all cylinders? If so, let's go.
What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you great.
Tell us about yourself, how you're making the world a better place, how you're helping human beings gain a little bit of momentum each day, changing their habits for the better. 5 core living.
Cool. All right. Yeah, let's do it. First of all, super excited to be on here. So thanks for inviting me, and thanks for everybody who's tuning in to listen. I'm really blessed with, later in life, discovering kind of what my calling is, later in life. I'm 45 years old. I kind of see my mission now as solving what I think is the world's biggest problem. So Abraham Maslow said that, preeminent psychologist, for those not familiar, he said that our path to deepest fulfillment in life is realizing our fullest potential, becoming all that we're capable of being, right? And I really believe in that. And Abraham had another shocking statistic, which was that he estimated only 2% of people realize their full potential in life. That means 98% of people, unfortunately, leave this world having left something on the table. And so my mission for the rest of my life is to widen that pie slice. I want to help more people to join that 2% club, more people to feel like, you know what, I gave this ride my all. I became all that I was capable of being. So yeah, that's the world's biggest problem, because imagine if 98% of the people, imagine if that script was flipped, and if 98% of people were at their full potential and 2% weren't. We could conquer anything. We'd solve everything, right? So that's what I'm all about.
I love, that's so funny, man. I love, not funny, but I love it. I in the past have talked about the 5%ers versus the 95%ers. And it's funny, I actually often catch myself, because I've written it. I started writing this stuff years ago. I don't remember how I got on the 5 versus 95, but as I've evolved, as I've read and learned more, I actually now start using, I'll correct myself and say, well, it's kind of more like the 1% versus the 99%. And now you've kind of split the difference there a little bit, which is probably
Yeah.
more accurate, the 2% versus 98%. And I say the same thing. And I mean, you are right on. Like, what would the world look like if we went from this 98% of people just kind of, I call it sort of hovering above rock bottom, not low enough to where they're like kicked in the butt to spark them to change their lives for the better, and to start taking the actions that are going to lead to their best selves, and then pay it forward and help others do the same, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what would happen if they went up, they rose up to that, like, I call it the firing on all cylinders in all 5 cores, like just killing it in your mindset, your relationships, your career and your finances, your emotional health, your physical health. Like, where would the world be? It'd be a pretty neat little place to live in.
Yeah, well, we'd be on fire, and we'd be tackling a lot of the stuff that we're struggling with at the moment. And I think people would be a lot happier. And so yeah, it would absolutely be a better place.
Yeah. So tell us about so we're 100% in alignment there. Tell us about the strategies, your main, like, how are you helping the world to do this? Like, what are you doing with people?
Right. So I like the power of three. I look for threes in everything, simplicity of the communication. And published a new book recently in September called The Three Alarms. In that book, the question is, okay, if we all want to reach our full potential, everyone says, yes, I want to do that. So then the next question is, yeah, but how do I do it? And there's lots of different domains that we can focus on in life. And I think the 80-20, the 20% of all the things that we could focus on that would drive 80% of the benefit is three domains. So let's become all that we're capable of being on the health front, become all that we're capable of being on the wealth front. And when I say wealth, I mean both making the money and investing the money. And let's become all that we're capable of being on the relationship front. So health, wealth, and relationships. So those are the domains that, So those are the domains that we want to focus on, and then we need levers, right? We need to create leverage within each domain. We need to be able to, create some momentum, right? Keyword. So how do we create that momentum? Another set of three, and I call it IPA. So like the beer, but better for you. So identity. We got to get our identity right. We got to get our productivity right, and we got to get our anti-fragility right. Anti-fragility, right? So why these three? So everything starts with identity. Behavior follows identity. I got a 7-year-old just before this live. I said, "Hey, Leo." And this is perfect, actually. So I said, "Hey, Leo, look what came in the mail for you." And he opens up the box, and I had bought him this proper metal Captain America shield. And he just flipped out. He, went and ran, got his Captain America costume, put it on, grabbed the shield. Now, what happened in that instant? So he instantly assumed the identity of Captain America. And I didn't have to give him a training program after that. I didn't have to say, okay, and Leo, this is how you're going to behave like Captain America. This is what he does. This is what you don't do. Behavior follows identity. So the moment he assumed that role, he immediately went into the character. So how this relates to us is that everything starts with identity. If you want to become all that you're capable of being, we need to choose the superhero version of ourselves. Choose the character that you want to be. And the beautiful thing about this, and it's why I just related it to Leo, my 7-year-old, is that I'm not asking anybody to do anything that they haven't done before. As children, we all knew this. We can all do this. We've all chosen our characters. We've all stepped into those roles. And we have the freedom of doing this our entire lives, right? So we start with identity because change starts with deciding who you want to be. Or said another way, you can't become a better version of yourself if you're going to continue being the person you've always been. You gotta choose something else. Why productivity? Because, well, you're not going to reach your full potential sitting on the sofa, sitting on the couch. You gotta be optimized for action. And these days, when I was 20 years ago, so when I was 25, I remember it was all about, knowledge is power, right? Knowledge isn't power anymore. Knowledge is cheap these days. I can Google anything, become an expert within a day. It's about translating knowledge into action. That's where the game is played. So that's why we need productivity. And we need that in our health. We need that in our wealth. We need that in our relationships. And anti-fragility. So what's that all about? So one of my favorite quotes, Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And the thing is we can decide what best looks like, what that superhero version of us is. We could be taking tons of action. And then what happens? Reality happens, right? Our plans don't go to plan. The unexpected happens. And so how do we fight that? By developing anti-fragile courage and confidence. Anti-fragility. To be anti-fragile is the opposite of fragile. So this is from a great book by Nassim Taleb, Anti-Fragile. And it simply states that, so if you are fragile as a person, that means that you take a few hits, you break down. And then I ask, okay, well, what's the opposite of fragile? And somebody says, robust. I'm like, okay, so you're strong, but that just means you take a few more hits, eventually you're going to break. And then you say, no, I'm resilient. Okay, so resilient by definition, you take some hits and you keep returning to where you were. That's not where it's at either. Anti-fragile, the more you get hit, the stronger you actually become. So that's the opposite of fragile. That's where we want to be. A lot of people don't think that that's possible, but your body does it already for you. So you just need to get it up in your head. You know, you stress a muscle, it causes it to grow, expose the immune system to germs and bacteria. It builds the strength of the system. You're already anti-fragile physically. You just need to get it up in your head mentally. So identity, productivity, anti-fragility.
Dude, whoa. I mean, you and I are, I interview a lot of people, and it's almost like we share a part of the same brain, like no joke. I mean, I don't know if you took a look at some of the things that I talk about, but, you know, and I always say this. And so let me start by saying, you know, universal principles are universal principles. Like, you can't cheat them. They've been around since the beginning of time. They're going to be around until we destroy ourselves. I like to joke, maybe I shouldn't, till the end, we'll say. Yeah. And if you base your life, if you base your actions off of these universal principles, then you're gonna turn out pretty darn happy. But if you try to cheat the system, if you do the opposite, if you let that lower brain and you're using certain universal principles, you're using this anti-fragile, which I love. I would, my term for it is growth owner versus fixed victim. And it's kind of saying the same thing, which is essentially like, you know, I categorize a fixed victim as somebody who I used to be back in college when I hit my rock bottom and I had my bounce. And fortunately, I was able to pivot very serendipitously. But I was your typical victim. Life was out to get me. My brain was broken. There was nothing I could do about it. I was suicidal. You know, problems were the biggest things in the world. I had zero self-confidence. My perception on the world was the glass was always half empty versus half full. Versus, you know, evolving, and I just became this insatiable self-help beast over the years, and that helped me in reading, and I wrote that book that you just mentioned, Nassim Taleb. I haven't read that one, so I'm going to. But just evolving into this, okay, not only is my brain not broken, but it's awesome, and it's got all these strengths, and it's very unique, and nobody else has what I have. Yeah, I've got things that I'm not the best at, weaknesses, but I'm not going to focus on those. I'm going to figure out workarounds. And especially in today's day and age, it's a lot easier than it used to be, right? You can outsource just about anything for very cheap and get help from anywhere around the world, and focus on your strengths, your passions. Obstacles are temporary roadblocks waiting for solutions. I'm going to kick ass, take names. I'm going to fail forward. I'm going to give fear the finger, and I'm going to set my goals, and nothing's going to stop me. Right. And so I get it. I'm
totally
excited. You can see it. I mean, that's the exact same thing you're saying. This is a universal principle. You can't cheat it. We're just saying it in slightly different ways, but the exact same message.
Yeah, completely. And I love when you're talking about fear. You know, I've been talking about fear a lot lately with people, and it's another instance where people need to flip the script. So what I mean is that people will often think, I need to build my courage and confidence so that I could step into my fears. And it's like, no, you got it the wrong way around. You need to step into your fear as the way that you are going to build your courage and confidence, right? Like
that's exactly right.
That's where you need to go. So when you have that mentality, then during the course of the day, when you start to feel a little bit nervous about doing something, or that's going to put me out there, I haven't done that before, suddenly you start to view those as like, those are like signposts. Those are like, those, you know, they're like signals that are beckoning your call in this direction you must step. You know, so that's kind of another thing that I've been obsessed with lately, is that whole relationship between fear and courage, and how you step into the fear as your way of building courage, not wait to have courage to step into your fear.
Dude, I love that. Let's talk about that for a second, because that's something that just, once you get that, and it's like your world, you'll never see things the same. And fear is one of these things that it's one of the biggest components of a fixed victim, or for you, it would be, for your fragile person, right?
Yeah.
And it is one of these things that's not real. But we've growing up through parents, through school, through media, through peers, whatever it is, we've created through emotional experiences. There's certain things ways we see the world, and fear comes into play as things that this is scary. This is something, I'm not good at, I can't do. And it stops us in our track. It kills any momentum we could possibly build. And it's like the chicken versus the egg. You can't become confident. You can't just work on your confidence and these things. You've got to actually the best way to do it is just take action on that fear. And I'm not saying when I get fearful of something, I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm scared, I'm going to go in it. I don't know if it's possible to get to that stage. Maybe somebody super enlightened further along than me has gotten there. But for me, it's more of, okay, this is an opportunity, right? I'm afraid. And now I've trained my brain to become aware of the fact that, okay, wait, I'm afraid of this. Why am I afraid of this? What is the opportunity here? I need to take the action on this if I want to grow and become a better person.
Totally. And a technique that I sometimes use is within each of us, you have the most courageous version of you. Like that version of you does exist. And in a moment when you're feeling like, man, I don't know if I should step in that direction, or I've not done that before. Again, I haven't put myself out in that way. If you just take a moment to pause and you just summon that most courageous version of you, and almost like, wait for that version to show up. And once they're there in the room with you, then you say, okay, what would you do in this situation? And the reason this is quite powerful is because we all know that it's much easier to give advice to others than it is to kind of, take our own. But by putting this into someone else, even though it's within you, and then you'll get the answer. Like that version of you will say, well, of course, you should just do it, or just do that, or talk to this person, or, don't do that. And then whatever that version of me says, I just follow the orders, so it's like, okay, yeah, thank you. I'll go do that, so that's like just another way that I play around with it.
Dude, yeah, 100%. I love that. So, okay, so you've got your three ways to build momentum within your three, and that's the other I didn't even mention earlier, but as you're describing your three things, I remember like I had 7 like of these main areas of your life that you need to focus on and pay attention to. I remember feeling so proud of myself for narrowing them down to these 5 cores, and now you've done it in 3. Right? It's like 7-minute abs instead of 8-minute abs. I beat you. I got you, buddy. Dude, I love it. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, yeah, health, wealth, relationships. I mean, it really does, in a broad sense, cover everything. And not that I'm going to switch what I'm doing, because I get a little bit more into the way that my system's obviously slightly different than yours. But I like that you've done it in 3 and basically said, look, it ain't rocket science, people. Again, it's universal principles. Like, you want to be your happiest, your superhero self. And I even talk about the kids stuff like all the time about, like you were saying, like we all had it at one point. Like we all had that wonder, that passion, that like sky's the limit, right? Like what's the world got for me today? Like how much fun can I squeeze out of today? And then life gets in the way and you start going down and becoming that victim-y self. That fragile self.
Yeah, and the I didn't like immediately zero in on the 3. It came through loss, really. So can I tell a quick story here?
Please.
Okay, so we're gonna go back 10 years in time, and I've been working my ass off for like the whole decade before that, in a really unhealthy way. And I'm boarding a plane, flights. It's a return flight to London. I live in the UK in London. And shortly after the cabin doors closed, I could tell something's not right. and the plane gets to, cruising altitude, and I'm starting to feel really unwell, and a lot of pressure starts developing in my chest. Pressure becomes pain, goes into the left shoulder, down the left arm. I say to, my buddy next to me, I'm like, man, can you feel my left arm? Because this is getting crazy. And he feels my arm, and then Lewis looks at me and he's like, yeah, something's not right, man. Your arm feels like it's been hanging in a meat locker. And it was like ice cold. And at this point, I'm sweating, I'm nauseous, lots of pain in the chest. And I said to him, Lewis, can you get some help? Something's not right. So Lewis runs to get a stewardess. Stewardess runs over, frantically asks if there's a doctor on board the flight. Luckily for me, there was one. Doctor rushes over, takes my vital signs, and says, we need to land the plane immediately. I think he's having a heart attack. And when you hear those words, 35,000 feet in the air, you're like, oh crap.
Is there a doctor on board, right? That's the first question.
Yeah.
They asked that? Is there a doctor?
Well, she had asked if there was that's who ran over to me, was a doctor who was on board. And so we go into an emergency kind of landing mode, and we touch down at in the small airport in France, and an emergency response team boards the plane, takes me off into a waiting ambulance. They administer nitrates to open up the arteries, increase blood flow to the heart. And as the ambulance speeds off to the local hospital, I looked up into the eyes of the paramedic looking down, and I said, please don't let me die. I have a 5-year-old son. And he said, well, I think we got you, just in time, just rest up. The next morning when I woke up in the hospital, I thought, this is crazy, right? Like, this is nuts. Talk about skating on thin ice. And I thought, why did it get to this point? And obviously work was really important to me, so fused to my identity that I was working so damn hard that it came at the price of everything else. So I knew, okay, there's something around wealth. Wealth has to be in the equation, again, both making the money and investing the money. I knew health was important because it was almost lights out. So I knew health had to be in the equation. But then what really struck me was that the very first words out of my mouth, it wasn't like, please don't let me die. I got to finish clearing my inbox,
Right. I'm guessing it had something to do with your family.
Yeah. So it was, please don't let me die. Right. I have a 5-year-old son. That's what I had said. And so that's what made it clear to me that, it's that health, it's the wealth, it's our relationships that if we're not operating at our best, something bad's gonna happen, right?
1,000%. Real quick, I want to talk about that, but I want to address somebody saying presidential inauguration, no respect. Huge respect for the president being inaugurated right now. Eric and I had this scheduled a while ago, so I see some angry emojis. It's not about that. I don't know where you stand politically, but please don't get mad. We're doing this interview because it's been scheduled, but mad love, respect to Biden. And we'll leave it at
agreed.
That. So, God, man, I haven't had a near-death experience, but I've talked to a lot of people who have, and read about it, and they all say the same thing. And it's almost like it's a shame that and like I said, I had my rock bottom in college. I had, I won't get into that, but I had my moment, and that's what kind of spurred me to kind of change my life and take action. You had this near-death experience, which did the same for you. What I always talk about is it's such a shame as all the rest of those people that, again, like I was saying earlier, just hover between that best life and that rock bottom. And it's like, there's not low enough to like really be like, oh crap, I need to get my act together, or there's nowhere to go but down. But not getting these things like we're talking about and focusing on the wrong things. And no matter how much money you get, so you and I have a very similar story. 10 years, I built my business. I wouldn't say I sacrificed my relationships and my physical health, because fortunately I had been reading and doing a lot in the meantime with all these books, as I said. And so I knew they were important, but I definitely, it was more like here's my career and finance core, and then here's my other ones over here, right? Whereas now I understand it's more about you want to balance them kind of equally, fire on all cylinders. And, just getting to that point where after I sold my business, and I already kind of knew in the back of my mind what was going to happen, which was, oh, this feels amazing, 10 years of my life. But then it was like, okay, now what, right? And you got that in a different way, which was, okay, now what? Great, I'm chasing, clearing my inbox, getting an extra $1,000, $10,000. That means nothing to me in this moment when I'm looking down the barrel of life and death. Like, it's all about my health, my family, their health, relationships. So thank you for sharing that. That's a really cool perspective.
Yeah, no problem. And it just prompted a different. So the issue is that I wasn't being intentional enough about what it was that I wanted to be doing in each of those areas, and so what I ended up doing, and I kind of like fell into it, just tried it one day and it really stuck. And this relates back to the title of my book, The 3 Alarms. So I grabbed my phone and I said, okay, well, what if I segment my day into 3 segments around health, wealth, and relationships? So looking after, myself physically, work-wise, home front relationships. And if I choose like a best self identity, so going back to the identity, I'm going to choose like me at my superhero version best and give that a name within each of those 3 domains. And then I set those as alarms on my phone with the thought that when that alarm pops up and I see that superhero version of me, it's going to be like an intentionality cue or like a reminder. Hey, Eric, how does that version of you show up now for the next segment of the day? How is that version of you going to behave? So for years, these 3 alarms have gone off on my phone. And at 6:30 a.m., the first alarm goes off and it says World Fitness Champion. I'm not a world fitness champion. I never will be. But that's who shows up in the gym, right, in the morning. And when I'm on that 8th rep and I'm sitting there doubting, am I going to, hit the 9th or the 10th? This weird little like sports announcer voice goes off in my head and he's like, and watch what's about to happen next. This is where the best separate themselves from the rest,
Dude,
and all powered by that identity, right? And then 9 a.m., next one goes off. It says world's best coach. That's what I do these days, help entrepreneurs, business owners, reach their full potential. So it says world's best coach. And to prompt, it just makes me think, well, if I really was the world's best coach, again, how would I show up during my day? And then the last one goes off at 6:30 p.m. And that was the real game changer for me. And it says world's best husband and father, just to prompt the question, how would the world's best husband and father walk through that door right now? And when you have that kind of intentionality, right, because you've defined what best looks like and you create like a simple little trigger or mechanism to remind yourself, well, where are you? How are you going to show up if you're going to be in congruence with that? It just started to, change. It didn't become perfect, but like when I fell down, I'd rise back up more quickly, and I was more consistently just behaving like each of those Captain America identities.
So, dude, I love that. You just helped me through something. So again, I was talking earlier about how I think we share the same brain, and I do the exact same thing in the way that I help people in a slightly different way, using the same principle of flash forwarding. So I've been trying to actually think of a better way to do it. I'm not going to steal your superhero thing, but I like what you've done versus, okay, so let me just tell you how I do it, which is very similar, and you'll see, it's like, oh my God. So I have people basically write what they would want said at their funeral. I call it the funeral list. Again, I've been looking for like a better way to say it, because I'm like, that's too morbid. But it accomplishes the same goal. Let's flash forward to the end of to your ultimate goal. Like what you want, how many people are gonna be at your funeral? What do you want said about you? And I actually do it for each of the cores. I say, what do you want said about you in each one? And then that just puts that laser focus on, okay, well, if that's the person I want to be, now let's go back to today am I on track with the habits that I have, with the actions that I'm taking in each of my course? And that's how I help people to basically say, look, your brain ain't lying. Like this is a way to see into the future of what you really, really do want. And so how are we going to get there? And are these habits helping or hurting you? I call them the failure versus success habits. And how do we slowly start replacing those failure ones with success habits? And so
nice. Yeah, and the whole trajectory of your life, right? Our lives will be ultimately linked to, well, how many good habits do you have running in the background versus bad, and the weighting of those habits, and it reminds me of like another thing that I throw in to these 3 alarms. So those are timed to go off at specific times of the day, but when at the start of each day, I do what I call my champion proofs. So what I mean is, like, I think of each of these versions of me, like they're the champion version of me on the health front, wealth front, relationship front. And so I ask myself, okay, if I had to evidence or prove that I was stepping into being that champion version of me today, what's the one thing that I could do, the number one thing I could do in each of those 3 things? So just 3 things, number ones for the day, which, if done, once again, would show that I was stepping up to the plate. And then that prompts me to think, okay, so on the health front, world fitness champion. So I might be like, okay, so if it was really the world fitness champion go to the gym in the morning, then what would I do? It's a cardio day. Okay, well, I'm going to do 700 calories on the bike because that's a world fitness champion output on the cardio, right? And on the work front, world's best coach, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to push myself, get those 13 scripts written for, my next 13, YouTube videos, right? I do 13 in a month. So, and then on the home front, I might be like, you know what, I'm going to write, a handwritten I love you note, for my wife, or I'm going to make sure that I, take a half hour break at some point during the day to play Super Mario Brothers with Leo, my 7-year-old, so it's like I'm picking like this number one thing, right, for each of them.
Awesome, man. Exact same concept. We're getting there in slightly different ways, but the end result, if you take either what your advice or my advice or both, is the exact same, is that you're just building a little bit momentum every single day. You're going to use that law of compounding for the universe, right? It's not going to happen overnight. Tomorrow, by playing Nintendo with your kid or by going to the gym, you're not going to be the Hulk and daddy of the year. But if you do that every single day and you take that one action that, like you said, is symbolic of your superhero best self, then that's going to start compounding, and you're going to start, and then it's cool how it works, because I know you've seen it, I can tell. As it starts to propel and the momentum starts to build, these actions start to become easier, and you want to take them, and you're starting to feel the results and get the goods, and that happy and that soul filling feeling, like we were talking about, like when you were a kid and you had that like wonder and passion and enthusiasm for life, and that's when it starts to happen. But anybody that says, I'm going to sell you the elixir of life for $9.99, click here, run, right? This is the way you have to do it. It takes commitment. It takes like becoming aware and understanding what you want. And then it takes saying, okay, I'm going to do this no matter what. And, you break your commitments to yourself. You're just hurting yourself. Yeah, totally. And I saw somebody just wrote, thinking on what is being said. Great idea is to flip the script. And that's, just to comment on that too, that's, it really is, if I had to come up with like and thanks, by the way, for, the person who just wrote that, because you've actually just helped me really crystallize something right now in this moment, which is that there are so many insights and improvement opportunities that you can discover by constantly looking for, well, what if I flip the script, right? So what if what I think the path to success, well, what does the opposite look like? And if you just had that as a regular practice, like just a regular way of being. So, we talked about it for courage, for example, that, okay, how do I develop
my courage to step into my fears versus, okay, well, let's flip the script. No, I step into my fears to develop my courage. Okay. And same with, identity, right? Or becoming a better version of yourself. How do I need to start behaving, to become the best version of me? Well, no, flip the script. Decide what the best version of you is, and then your behavior will follow that identity. And then it leads me to a third thing. And I love this way of thinking, which is, and this was inspired by an author named Stephen Pressfield. So the idea of like a professional versus an amateur. So an amateur needs to feel like doing something in order to take action, whereas a professional takes action whether they feel like it or not. Or said another way, an amateur believes that feeling precedes action. Flip the script. A professional knows that it's action that generates feeling. And this, for me, is such an incredibly powerful thing to grasp, because when you can disconnect your need to having to feel like doing something in order to do it, it's like you become limitless in what you can achieve, because more often than not, there's tons of times during the course of a day when I don't feel like doing something, but I then say to myself, well, what does that have to do with it though? Because if I just take action, then within a few minutes of taking action, I do feel like, I don't feel like going to the gym. Start exercising and suddenly you feel like it. Like, I don't feel like sitting down to work. Well, if I just take action and start to work, then that feeling kind of goes away, right?
God, so I love how you're putting that. That's 100% right. I mean, exactly right.
Yeah. So I really, I think just constantly looking for ways to flip the script in your thinking is a really powerful kind of like construct or way of thinking that I hadn't like really articulated so precisely until now, with the help of the person.
Yeah, let's see, who was that? And there was another question I want to go back to. Somebody asked, can I ask a question? Thinking on what is being said, great idea to flip the script, from Yaka Ruth. Thank you. And then somebody else had asked, Mark said, how to motivate someone who isn't motivated. Well, I think you kind of just said it. You gotta trick your brain. So I was listening to a podcast the other day. This all ties into, I assume you're familiar with Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
Okay. I would think a lot of people on here are not. If not, you should check out his podcast. It's awesome. And his books he's written. And anyways, he had Jerry Seinfeld on, and Jerry Seinfeld was talking about how, like, we're all just dogs. Like, you got to look at our brains as dogs. And it's like if left to our own devices, where's that next piece of food coming from? You know what? It's the low-hanging fruit that if there's no awareness, if we just go with our instincts, we're in big trouble, right? Because we're just going to eat until we pass out, or whatever it is, or not work out at all, or not write, take the actions to write the book you want to write, or whatever it is. But if you can trick your brain, like kind of hack it, and taking action is one of the best way to do it. Like, and I call it fake it till you make it. There's lots of different ways to say it. Again, universal principles, but you just do it. Like, just force yourself and get in the actual habit of just taking the action. And you're not going to feel like it at first, but once you do it, then you are going to feel like it, and you're like, oh my God, why didn't I do this? Like, this is so great, and it's an undescribable feeling. I know you've had it. It's sad to think that a lot of people in their lives don't ever really get that. And again, it compounds on itself, that feeling, right? You just take the action, and I call it personal integrity, which is sort of like you've got your commitment to yourself is everything. And it's sort of like you either have it and you're going to do it, or you're just going to say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or do it. And then again, it goes back to the 98 versus the 2%ers. You want to be that 98%er that never really fully experiences what life has to offer? Just do it tomorrow. Or, skipping one won't really matter, right? Or you want to be that 2%er, you just got to, and it's not easy. And everything in your brain, because you've got developed these habits, you've developed these patterns, is going to say, no, I don't want to do this. Like, this sucks, right? But then you start doing it, and it's just amazing how the power of momentum takes over.
And that's another perfect example of flipping the script, right? So the person wants to improve their motivation to do things. Well, no, do things to improve your motivation, right?
Exactly. Right. So I kind of got sidetracked, but that's exactly where I was going. Right. Just take the action, and then you'll
Yeah,
start wanting to take the action more. Like Simon Sinek says, right? You got to
yeah,
tap into that why. Like, why do I want to do this? If you just say I should go to the gym, forget about it. Then it's all willpower. Willpower runs out of steam. You
yeah.
can't willpower is one of the biggest myths out there that like people try to use to lose weight or to get in shape or to write their book or start their business. You've got to get deep down on in there and connect with something deep in you that goes, yeah, this makes sense and I really want to do this. And just taking the action is really that's the answer, because then you start feeling that, like I call it the success loop, right? You take a little bit of action and then you have a teeny bit of success, and then that feels really good, and you build a little bit, your mindset grows and you start becoming more of that growth owner, and then you want to take more action, you get more energy, and then you take a little bit more action, and then you have a little bit more success, right? And then it just keeps going and going, and it's revving and it's building momentum, versus the opposite, the failure loop, which is, okay, I'm not going to take any action and I'm going to feel worse about myself. My energy levels are going to go down and I'm not going to feel motivated. And that's going to hurt my mindset, cause me to be more of that fixed victim. And it's going to cause me to have failures and bad things that happen in my life. And then that's going to even further decrease my actions, right? And then you're stuck in that failure loop. So.
Totally. And then with motivation, the fun thing then is that you can make it a game, and you say, okay, so I want to start generally feeling more motivated. So how do I turn this into a game? Well, I look forward to the next time when I don't feel motivated. Like, I can't wait for that next time when I don't feel like I'm doing something, because I know precisely that is the weight in the gym of life. So if I step towards the rack, grab the weight, complete the repetition, I become stronger. So it's like I'm going to look forward to that moment, because I know to build my motivation in that moment, I do whatever it is, even though I don't feel like it. And that first time, that's like the big push when you do it. But if you just keep doing that, like you're saying, then like a muscle, the motivation grows over time.
100%. So that is my dog. That's not Eric's. In case people are like, why didn't he put his dog in? It's me. It was me. There's some people doing some work outside, and that's what he does. I can't blame him for it. Again, it's the dog brain, right? He can't help it. He's not. But so and I mean, it's kind of a funny way to say it, but right, he can't step outside of himself and go, this barking isn't doing any good for me, right? I'm just going to bark because that's my instinct. I'm going to do it. Just like going to grab a piece of chocolate at midnight, if you just let your lower self brain take over, you just go, okay, well, what's the harm? Just one little piece of chocolate. Okay, well, one more, right? Then it compounds, and what happens? You end up, your teeth will fall out. You become very heavy, and right. Versus, you know what? Let me reduce the friction on this. I'm going to get rid of any sweets that are already in my. That's another gamification way that I like to. Have you read Atomic Habits, by the way, by James Clear?
Yeah. Great book.
And so he uses this like kind of this. I like the reducing friction of sort of like making what you want obvious, right? And so it ties in the whole gamification, and then what you don't want invisible. So if you don't want to eat chocolate, get rid of all the chocolate in your house. Temptation gone. What do you want? So for me, and this is actually a real life example, I used to just eat Doritos and cookies and whatever back when I could get away with it when I was younger. And then I finally got a cavity, and I noticed as I started getting a little older, I was gaining a little bit more weight in areas I wasn't happy about. And I'm like, okay, this isn't working. And so then I just switched it with mixed nuts, which is my thing. And in these day and age, there's no excuse to be like, wow, there's nothing that tastes quite like cookies. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, at first, but again, just take the action and start eating the mixed nuts or whatever it is that you like in particular, because everybody's got different taste buds. So reduce the friction by finding that thing that it is that almost tastes almost as good. And then what's going to happen is by doing that and eating that every night, then it's actually going to start tasting better than that chocolate tasted, because not only have you gotten used to that taste and you're craving that, but you've got that feeling of, oh, I'm actually improving my health by eating this. And there's no feeling like it.
Yeah, yeah. And have you ever played around with creating like strong negative losses associated with not achieving your goals?
Like punishing myself for not achieving them, you mean?
Yeah, like a strong negative consequence for not achieving something. Because there's
Not
some.
really. I'm more on the reward myself for the positives to motivate me, but please explain.
So, okay, so hard coded in our DNA is, concept called, is a strong tendency towards loss aversion. So basically, a human being is twice as likely to want to avoid losing something as they are gaining something. And the thinking is that this is because while in relatively recent times, we live in an abundant world, that's not what we've evolved from. We've evolved from, there's no resources, got to protect the food I have, the water I have, all of that. So that can be used to our advantage. And there's some interesting behavioral science out of Yale University, which shows that when people tie a very strong negative consequence to not achieving a goal, it increases the likelihood of achieving the goal by over 3 times. And
versus a positive reward, you mean, or
yeah,
versus not using a positive reward at all?
Versus just on its own. So not in comparison to a positive reward, but yeah. So three times increase in likelihood of success. And one of the simplest ways of doing that is to make a bet. So pick a sum of money that would be, not going to take you out completely. Don't lose your house, but something that's going to sting, something that you wouldn't want to lose. And you can even up it by having it go to a cause or a movement, or you're going to donate it to a political campaign or something that you wouldn't support. And you can up it even further by saying that not only will I have to make this donation to a cause that I don't support, but I'm going to have to publicly proclaim it, on Facebook or Instagram or something, and make it known that I've donated to this thing, whatever it may be. And obviously that whole, the idea of doing that, losing money, having to donate to something you wouldn't want to donate to, having to like socially embarrass yourself, like all of that leads to a pretty massive spike in the likelihood of you achieving the goal, because then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to let any of that happen. And your achievement can kind of go through the roof. So yeah, I'm just mentioning that because I've played around with that, and it's worked wonders for me sometimes, when, especially around something that's like particularly challenging. I'm like, I keep failing at that. Well, make a bet, have a serious consequence tied to it, and then suddenly I'm like, wow, now it's easy. I'm achieving this, no problem.
That's really interesting. You said, I am very familiar with that. I've never personally used it myself. I've seen a few apps because as I mentioned earlier, I'm developing an app that's gamifying the whole experience and using exactly the types of stuff we're talking about right now to kind of trick your brain and make you want to get addicted to leveling up, both on screen and in life. Dude, this has been such a great conversation. You've sparked something else in my mind. I've been just trying to figure out the pay model, because I don't want to charge people for this app, right? I want as many people to just be able to use it. And I don't even like, okay, then, you get to level 2 and then you got to start paying. I don't know. To me, that just doesn't feel right. But maybe the pay model is, if you fail, then there's a certain amount of money, and it goes to the app. And this is how I fund the app. That's really interesting. I have seen that. I've always wondered how realistic it is for people to follow through with that. I feel like a lot of people would try to do that, and then they would fail. Like, I'm not really going to give $100 to charity or to whatever. But I'm wondering if it's part of the app and it's part of the experience, and you're really into it, if you'll end up doing it, because it's like, well, I'm all in here.
Yeah, it does require the person. You have to let the payment go through, right? So if you kind of suddenly in the last second go, maybe another time, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. But
right.
if your goal is to improve yourself, then if you have that kind of mentality going in, then maybe you'll be less likely to kind of give yourself the easy out if it's payday.
Oh my God, yeah, and you know, the stock market is the first thing that comes to my mind of something that one of my resolutions is to just not look at the stock market, not dwell on it. As you know, I'm always evolving and growing too, and as much as I've gotten better at it, it's still part of sneaks in there. And you know what you just said is 100% true. It's like if the stock market goes way up, or my particular stocks, it feels good, but not nearly as bad as it feels when it goes down. Like that's way more of an intense feeling. And so that's like your perfect example there.
Yeah, exactly. Same sort of thing. And I have another interesting thing that I was just thinking about in terms of like losing things on the productivity front. So this is shocking. So this comes from the book The One Thing, and on the average person loses 28% of their workday to jumping around from like one task to the next, and not staying focused on whatever it is that they're working on. And they gave that stat in the book, and then I thought, well, that's interesting, but let's take that and apply it to the number of work weeks in a year. So I took 52 weeks, and okay, let's take 6 off for vacation. So if we're losing 28% of 46 weeks, what does that mean? It means that the average person loses 13 weeks a year, which is equivalent to a calendar quarter. So that means that the average person who thinks that they don't have enough time to get all the stuff that they want to get done in life, well, yeah, because you're only playing with 3 quarters in the year instead of 4. And
I love that. That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, and then if you extrapolate that across a decade, it gets even crazier, because it means that the average person, across a career, it means that the average person is losing a decade over a career, which is nuts.
Oh,
so
God, decade over a career. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm writing that down because I love that. So a decade over a career for what is the career span?
So like 40 years. So in 40 years, you lose a decade.
40-year career. Yep. Right.
So the solution on that is that if we all want to get like more productive and produce more, one of the simple secrets is to focus on single tasking. So don't jump around from task to task. For example, you sit down, it's 9 o'clock, you're working on something for 13 minutes, and then you're in your inbox, and then you're on Facebook, and then you go reheat your coffee, and then you sit back down and you're working on something, and then the phone rings, and now you're, I'm just going to research this quick thing on Google, and like all of that leads to this huge loss in the day. And if you just really focus, especially when you want to get something important done, get your phone kind of out of sight, out of mind, close down all the browser tabs, and just focus on that one thing at a time. I'm going to work 30 minutes on this or 60 minutes on that. If you start to work in that way and catch yourself from jumping around, then you can literally add 13 weeks a year to your life. You can add a quarter back every single year. What's not to like about that, right?
Do you mind? I love that. Do you mind if I'm writing this down. This is such a good post. I would love to do a post on this.
Yeah.
Where I because this is a perfect example of what I'm trying to help people do, which is gamify. Everything I'm doing ties into gamifying it, making it reducing the friction by wanting to do it. And that, I can't think of a better way. Like if you can just, and it's all about tapping into their why. Like, okay, well, what's the big deal? But if you look at it like that, that's just a great way. It kind of ties into your whole best version of yourself, having that alarm set and my funeral list. It's like you're flash forwarding to what's it going to look like if you don't take this action.
Yeah.
Do I have
cool? Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll reference you. Love that, man. That's freaking amazing. Yes, thank you.
On the and now as we talk about gamification, I want to share one game I've been playing lately, last couple of months. Really cool. So I just have a calendar up on the wall, and it's a it's a best self game basically. So the goal of the game is you set it as your intention at the start of every day to do your best, right? In the context of that day. And what's nice about that is that that's all you can ever do, right? You can only ever do your best in the context of a day. So what I mean is that even if the day doesn't go to plan, that's okay. You don't have to feel bad about it as long as you still did your best. You got a flat tire, couldn't go to the gym, whatever, but did you do your best in the context of the day?
Right.
And if you did your best at the end of the day, just put a W, in the calendar, a W for a win. And if you didn't do your best, just put an L for learn. And make it a goal to have no more than 6 L's in a month, because anything less than that is lower than 80%. We want an 80% hit rate on showing up at our best. And then the other rule of the game is never 2 L's in a row. So if you have a day where you didn't show up and do your best, you had an L for learn, rather than a W for win. Well, that's fine, but just don't do that 2 days in a row. And what's really cool is that one, you find yourself in the course of the day like, okay, well, should I grab that and eat that right now? Okay, well, if I do that, I'm gonna have to put an L for the day. I'm not sure. You get into a bit of an argument with someone, and you can keep going, you can really keep pushing it, and you're like, that would result in an L for the day. I'm not going to do that.
Dude, okay, so this just confirms, like, we are the same person. I mean, it's like you're my brother from another mother. My gamified way, again, using the exact same technique that's going to produce the same result. But I started with, my system has evolved over the years, and it's culminating with the app. But it started with Ben Franklin's 13 Virtues, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Way back in the day, he called them virtues, but I kind of slightly transformed it. These are the top habits I'm working on. These are the days of the week at the top. And literally at the end of the day, I would print one out for every day of the week. And at the end of the day, I would just force myself to put a check next. Okay, these are the things I want to do. Did I do that? Check, no check, no check. And then that evolved into a Word document, which then evolved into an Excel spreadsheet, which is now the app, which is basically the exact same thing you're talking about. It's gamifying it, making it into a game. But mine is more, you rate yourself how you did in all 5 of your cores for that day overall. And it's sort of like you just said, like, okay, and you have the habits that you're actually working on, and you don't want to work on too many at one time because you'll get overwhelmed. And so you've got just a few that you're working on, and you say, okay, these were the habits I was focused on today. And then you actually review them at the beginning of the day, and then at the end, you just give yourself a simple score. And in the app, it's going to be super exciting because you're this rocket ship, and you've got your 5 cores. And the idea is you want to be firing on all cylinders. Each one of these cores is an engine of your rocket. And if you're not balancing them and continually taking action and building the habits that are going to take you to the next planet, the next galaxy, otherwise you're going to fly off course. You're going to go in the wrong direction. There's going to be little aliens you meet that give you universal principles. You're landing on planets. There's asteroid fields. But that's it, dude. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And again, it's like trying to, this day and age in this generation, you got to gamify it. You got to think of fun ways to brain hack around it, like Seinfeld said, to get around your dog brain, because otherwise you're just going to have too much resistance, and you're just going to be that 98% that says, it's too difficult. I'm not gonna work.
And what do you do? So when you have when you just have like a crap day, the day just doesn't go to, it's just not a good day, and you're not happy with it. Do you do anything, or anything in particular to try to rebound the next day? Yeah.
So part of my thing is right now I'm using the notes on my phone to grade once a week. I actually use the more robust Excel spreadsheet, and I actually go through every core. But every day, at the end of the day, I use the notes on my phone, and I give myself a score from 1 to 5. And then I have a little note section that says why, like what did I fail on today, or what could I have done better? And then the next day I make sure, and I actually have a mantra. Part of my morning routine is I have a mantra where I talk about the things that I want to work on the most, that are most important to me, basically these habits within my 5 cores. And then at the end, I talk about what I'm grateful for, which helps build that energy and that boost. And then I sit down and I literally have my top 5 habits written right in front of me here on my computer screen when I sit down, and I read them every single morning. And I'm like, these are the top 5 things that are crushing my momentum and keeping me from firing on all cylinders. So I'm just going to, and it's awareness. Like you said earlier, it's just continuing to beat it into my head. And if I failed one day, it's like, okay, didn't do it today. And then reflecting on it that night, and then reflecting on it the next morning, being, okay, we're not going to make that same mistake, right? Then that's how you just continue to try to improve.
Yeah. So very, very similar to the way I think about it. Like the most catastrophic thing you can do is have that second bad day. Like let yourself, because like once that string starts, that negative string, then it's just like, oh man, it's so hard then to pull the nose up, right? But if so if the game is less about avoiding the knockdowns. That's not the game. The game is like, no, the knockdowns are fine. They'll happen. But the game is like, how quickly do you stand back up? Right? So.
Yeah. And so in the app, the way it actually works is it's based on checking in every day. It is essentially what you get rewarded for. Like you're giving yourself a score each day, but that's not going to affect your momentum score. Your momentum score is going to be, did you check in the morning, and did you give yourself the nightly review? And the reason that I set it up that way is because I don't want to punish people if they fail that day, right? However, I have a streaks feature in there, so it's like it motivates you to, if you score a minimum of 4 out of 5 for a certain number of days, you get certain rewards. Like you start to level up your ship. You get one get out of jail free card where you're able to, use if you fail for a day or miss a day or whatever, and certain other little upgrades and stuff. But that's kind of how I do it, and I think about it versus like, oh, I failed, but it's like, okay, if I'm just, as long as I keep checking in each day and I keep working on it, and then I'm growing, and I'm basically that's what it's all about, and I'm solving the problem.
Cool. Love it. I'm looking forward to seeing the app. When's it out?
Yeah. So hopefully April, May, they're saying, will be the beta. Will be ready. I've been working on it for about 2 years now. I mean, it's 10 years in my brain, but 2 years of actual like preparing wireframes development. So super excited. Yeah, I've got your email. I'll make sure you can get a beta version copy and test it out.
Cool. And then I also wanted to throw out there, anybody listening, watching, if you head over to my website, there's a link in my Instagram bio. And if you head over to my site, you can actually pick up a free digital copy of my new book, The 3 Alarms. So it's hit bestseller status on Amazon, which is cool. But it goes into a lot of the concepts that we just talked about today in a lot more depth. So yeah, so head over to the bio, click the link, and you grab that free digital copy of the book.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna do it. I'm writing it down right now. I may actually just go on Amazon and buy it. I like to have the hard copies, but I'm like that too. So I'm more of like a paperback guy. Yeah, I'm doing it. Well, dude, this has been awesome. This is what I want to do. I want to actually have a conversation with you briefly after this. I want to talk to you about a couple things. Do you have a couple minutes?
Totally. Yeah, okay, all good.
So what I'll do is I'll shoot you the Zoom link in your DM, and then we'll hop on real quick. But dude, thank you so much, Eric. I hope everybody enjoyed this. I mean, God, I learned a lot, and I love when I connect with people and we're in sync, but then I see things from slightly different perspectives. Not only does it reinforce in my mind, like, okay, I'm on the right track, but it helps to just broaden the whole, okay, I'm filling in little pieces that might have been missing and seeing, from those different angles. So I thank you for that.
100% agree, man. It's like, the secret to learning and to really like getting stuff and getting the fundamentals, like you kept referring to, like the principles, is just keep hitting it from lots of different angles, because it's by hitting it from lots of different angles that you see like the true underlying code beneath it all, like the matrix, kind of appears, right? So yeah, 100% agree. And yeah, super grateful for, being on your live today, and, big shout out and thanks to everyone who is kind of, watching and listening. Grateful for your time and energy. So thank you.
Absolutely, bro. Check him out. Eric, EricPartaker.com. Thanks, buddy.
Cool. All right. Thanks, man.
Okay.
See ya. Bye.
That's it for today's episode of the 5 Core Life podcast with Will Moore, founder of More Momentum. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have not already, please make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast wherever you are listening or watching. This so that you get notified when new episodes air every week. And if you've not joined the 5 Core Life Facebook group, I encourage you to join that and see what all of the fuss is about. There's some awesome content designed to get your momentum going, including a monthly giveaway to win a complimentary coaching call with the Will Moore. The Facebook group is currently the only place to get Will's dedicated attention on your 5 core journey. If you're feeling stuck or just want someone to cheer you on, then that is the place you need to be. There's nothing like a community of people on the same journey to get you fired up, kicking butt, and taking names. So come join us.
Get moving. Gain momentum. Join the movement. Join Emmett by going to moremomentum.com to take a free life evaluator quiz on where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores.